This is the Experienced Optimist. And I found a pretty good article online. The title of it is, I was raised to hate men, and now I don't know what to think about feminism. The reason why I like this article is because it shows what happens when young women are poisoned by feminism and this ideology that allows women to hate men. But let's get started. I don't remember learning about feminism. I never had some undergraduate feminist clique moment. The gender wars were part of my life from my first breath. Get this, a suburban working mother with twins in the late 70s and early 80s, my mother was outspoken about feminism in any given situation. I had t-shirts with feminist slogans on them, and when I was little, my parents thought it was hilarious to point out some instance of sexism in our environment and then look at me for the punchline. With my hands on my hips, I'd stomp my foot and say, "Male chauvinist pig." I was an outspoken kid. I stood up for myself against bullies. I never hesitated to raise my hand in school. From an early age, I understood that I was expected to make it on my own in the world. I could be whatever I wanted to be career-wise, and men were not required. When I was 10, I told my mom I was going to grow up to be a journalist, live in a loft in Paris, and have a succession of live-in lovers. See, how many women want to live this fantasy lifestyle like that? Plenty, I'm sure. When I was 11, my mom came out as a lesbian, and my parents got divorced. She had met a woman who she is still with to this day, and they wanted to be together. My dad moved across the country and everything changed. There was the usual step-parent stuff. My mom's wife had much stricter rules that had been previously been in place regarding our behavior in the house. And my mom's new health food kick put us on a restrictive diet of tofu, brown rice, and steamed zucchini. She forbade ice cream and other bad foods, and for a time harshly enforced transgressions of the food rules. And I want to stop right here because I noticed that a lot with women too. Women will talk about men being bossy and being domineering, but a lot of times women become dictatorial over small things like taking the garbage out or separating clothes, washing clothes a certain way, and like it says here, eating certain foods. What I found with women is a lot of times they put the emphasis on things that really don't matter. My mother's brand of feminism went from wanting equal rights, get this, wanting equal rights to wanting to smash the patriarchy, which she defined for my brother and me as men's historical oppression of women, which they continue to do today. You know, obviously that's bullshit. Women pretty much can do whatever they want now. But let's get back to the article. No man could escape complicity, not even little boys, she said. And this is the dangerous mindset of feminism right here. Suddenly men were the root of all of women's problems, and since they had all the power, we had to fight them. Men were always wrong. Men were aggressors. Men were rapists. Men were stupid. Men were obsessed with their penises. Men were responsible for forcing my mother, get this, into a heterosexual marriage and motherhood. Mary Daly and Andrea Dworkin had become her prophets. I guess those are feminists. She never once said that patriarchy wasn't synonymous with men. She used the terms interchangeably. She told us we'd been forced on her by the patriarchy, and given the choice, she would not have had us. See, this is what she's saying here. As we all know, women can't take responsibility for their actions. Now, she had twins. She had a boy and a girl. She was probably always a lesbian. But she felt that she had been forced into that relationship, even though she did it herself. Even though she chose to have those kids. Even though she probably knew she was a lesbian. And then she puts all the blame on the patriarchy. All right. My mom and her wife began frequenting a women-only coffee house in Chicago. No boys over the age 10 were allowed. They went back to school to earn master's degrees in women's studies, useless degree, and their class and study schedule took precedence over the rest of the calendar. Notice the self-importance and narcissism of her mother and her girlfriend, or her wife. One year, Thanksgiving fell right before midterms, so they tried to cancel the holiday. My brother stepped in. He cooked the hell out of the turkey and baked a splendid turtle pie. Oh my goodness. I can only imagine what this kid's going through. It would be fair to stipulate that my mother had dark emotional issues unrelated to feminism. However, I was a kid. I didn't understand that her grasp of the academic feminist theory she was so proudly touting might not have been firm, meaning she was probably crazy. There was no internet on which to fact check. I took her at face value. Very many things I did made me a sellout to the patriarchy in her eyes. I wore makeup. I shaved my legs and armpits. I liked boys. Flip this nightly lecture to be about what men do to hurt women, and imagine being my brother. Like I said, I can only imagine the bullshit she probably puts her son through. We moved from the suburbs to Chicago when we began high school. My mom and her wife were deep in their grad program and entrenched with the women from the coffee house. Many of them wouldn't read books written by men or see movies with male protagonists. Most of the women were nice to me and my brother, but it was made clear to us that some of their friends wouldn't come over because there was a teenage boy in the apartment. They were separatists and wanted to live completely apart from men. I was stunned, but he's your son. He's still male, my mom said. And if I didn't have a son, I'd probably be a sep too, meaning she would want complete separation from men. I wish I could unlearn this. I understood very well that there were all kinds of shitty dudes out there. I experienced this reality day by virtue of taking public transportation and attending public high school. But my brother wasn't a threat to my mom's friends. In the 11th grade, I was hanging out with people I didn't much like. The guys especially bugged me because they were really into my mom being a lesbian. And this is one of those things I tell a lot of guys. Bisexual chicks and lesbians, just leave them alone, man. Don't think with your dick when it comes to that type of stuff. It'll get you in trouble, believe me. I had stopped shaving by then, which gave them all sorts of weird ideas about me. They would surround me and demand to know if I hated men. I will fully admit that I was pretty messed up in the head, and it's possible that I parroted far more of my mom's rhetoric than I was comfortable remembering. I definitely fought with those boys a lot. A few years ago, one of them messaged me on Facebook accusing me of decades of misandry, which was the first time I heard that term. And until recently, I'd only ever heard of the term from MRA types, which, as we all know, misandry is when you hate men. I had no idea some feminists embraced the label with something like irony. This guy was so angry at me, and I barely remembered him. It took me weeks to remember how they would surround me and try to get me to rant. I remember how my actual friends told me they were just trying to get a rise out of me, and how they only did it to piss me off. I was angry, not as a feminist, but as a kid with a crappy home life and female friends who scattered whenever I got surrounded. Sometimes I found myself shouting, "You're right, I do hate men," just to get those guys to leave me alone. Now, the next paragraph, I want you guys to keen in on this. My mom started encouraging me to find a nice girl to fool around with. Basically trying to get her to be bisexual or to be a lesbian. She told me any woman who had sex with men wasn't a feminist. She told me all heterosexual sex was rape by definition. And this is why we have such rape hysteria right now in our culture. It's because of this type of poisonous thinking that gets women to think that whenever they have sex with a man, it's rape. When I asked her if she meant I was a product of rape, she told me I was letting myself get raped every time I had sex with my boyfriend, which, as we all know, is complete bullshit. In college, I was so averse to labels and power that I refused to run for student government when asked. Once a boyfriend and I were hungry at my house, and I had a panic over, and get this, this is where the psychosis comes in when women run into issues where they're trying to figure out who should do what when it comes to male and female roles, pretty much. And I had a panic attack over what it would mean if I fried an egg for him, which seems so silly now. It wasn't the egg that should have given me pause. It was the particular guy. But I no longer had any judgment because at the time, I still struggled with the idea that all men were the same and out to control me. It took me a long time to get past this, and honestly, I don't know what happened. I think 10 years of therapy had something to do with it. So this girl was so screwed up from this feminist ideology that she did 10 years of therapy. Her boyfriend and her were hungry one night. She didn't know what it would mean if she made him an omelet, scrambled eggs or whatever, because she felt like then he would be controlling her somehow. And this is the problem with a lot of women in America and around the world. They feel like if they do something for men, that the men's trying to control them, when there are plenty of good men out there that don't want their wife to be submissive, but want their wife to help them out every once in a while. The last two paragraphs here. So what's the opposite of being a feminist? Not being one? That's not an option for me if I'm going to live in the world, because we still need feminism badly. See, she went through all that, and she still has this weird obsession with feminism. I have no real conclusion to this essay other than to say that I will forever be confused and hurt by the kind of feminism I was raised to believe was the only true feminism. I didn't even write this as an indictment on my mom, which she should have, who has mellowed so much with age and apologized for a few things. Misandry, as an ironic or non-ironic feminist pose, might be cathartic for a while, but it has nothing to do with achieving equality. And espousing outright hatred and contempt for all men to your children is not a feminist act. It's tantamount to child abuse. And that last sentence says it all. Child abuse. When you have women like this, who hate men, put men down, champion feminism, she probably got with a mangina when she got married initially. She was a lesbian. She knew that most likely. And that's probably where most of her hatred came from. When you have someone like this, and then they have a daughter, and then they have a son which they browbeat and make him feel emasculated, this type of stuff spreads through the rest of society. And before you know it, you have a society that we're living in right now. Now, of course, I believe our society has probably been like this for a lot longer than most men care to admit. But this is just an article I wanted to share with you guys because I wanted you guys to see the poison that this type of ideology can create. But if you like this video, give a thumbs up, hit subscribe, hit the notification button. If you have a MGTOW question that you would like me to address, or you wanted to just email me and let me know of something that was MGTOW related, I'm going to leave my email address in the description box. And once again, if you like what you hear, like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification button, and I'll talk to you later. This is